Dear students of PG Semester 1, CC3, Shakespeare is the group. Today I am going to deliver my lecture on plot structure analysis in Hamlet. So I am going to begin right now. The basic structure of the plot of Hamlet is remarkably simple. Simple. A wrong occurs and the hero seeks revenge. And the hero seeks revenge. Um, um, Revenge to make it right. In the process, everyone is destroyed. Shakespeare develops the plot of his revenge tragedy in classical form. Act 1 is largely expository in nature, introducing the main characters and the conflict. Um, Tragedy, Act 2, Scene Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4 contain the rising action of the plot as the conflict develops largely in Hamlet's mind. Act 5 contains the climax, a short period of falling action, and the denouement or conclusion in which Fortinbras takes control of Denmark to bring order to the country once again. The genre of revenge tragedy or tragedy of blood was immensely popular among English Elizabethan dramatists. In typical revenge tragedies such as Hamlet, the plot arises largely out of a situation for which the hero is not responsible. Additionally, even though the hero may have a tragic flaw that contributes to his downfall, he is usually undone by circumstances over which he has no control. Accordingly, in Hamlet, the crime that calls for vengeance has already been committed before the play begins. The real cause of the tragedy is the evil and intolerable situation surrounding Claudius's murder of Hamlet's father, the king. As Hamlet tries to find a way to avenge his father's death, murder, madness, and ghosts are all brought to the front of the stage, creating interest and tension in the audience. The plot of the play is not complex. It progresses in linear fashion with all events happening in chronological order. There are new flashbacks as when Hamlet recounts the events that happened on the ship sometime after they occurred, but they are easily followed and understood. The play within a play even functions as a flashback as it reveals how Claudius has murdered the late King Hamlet. There are also many foreshadowings to indicate what will happen later in the play. For example, the stabbing of Polonius foreshadows the stabbing of Claudius, and the victorious return of Fortinbras foreshadows the ascension to the Danish throne. The climax of the plot is masterfully written conclusion to a tense drama dominated by internal and external conflict. All of Act 5 is filled with dramatic irony, as many of the characters as well as the audience know the Leatrice's sword is unscathed and bears a poison tip. Also, they are aware that the wine for Hamlet to drink has been poisoned by Claudius. Only Hamlet and his only Ham just a minute. Only Hamlet and his knave mother seem to be unaware of the tragedy that is to unfold. The entire scene is made more tense by the fact that Hamlet at first seems to winning the conflict, making the first two strikes remaining untouched by Laertes' foil and refusing to drink the poisoned wine. In presenting a recovered Hamlet, now acting with determination and control, Shakespeare hints that tragedy may be avoided. Unfortunately, the tragic hero has procrastinated too long, and the rotten state of Denmark seems to have affected everyone. As a result, all must die. Hamlet is stabbed by the poisoned sword. Laertes is killed by Hamlet. Gertrude drinks the poisoned wine and dies. And Claudius finally gets his just rewards when Hamlet drives the poisoned sword into his flesh and forces him to drink from the poisoned wine. Fortunately, Horatio is left behind to explain the villainy of Claudius and the innocence of Hamlet. Additionally, a savior in the person of 13 Brass are left to restore order to the corrupt state of Denmark. Hamlet has the theme of vengeance, as I have told you earlier. The main theme in Hamlet is one of vengeance and family honor. Initially, Fortinbras is the representation of vengeance. Hamlet's father, the late king, has defeated Fortinbras's father in battle. As a result, young Fortinbras aspires to recover the lands and power lost by his father as a way of honoring and avenging him. Though he eventually finds another means of vengeance, his example is duly felt. Hamlet does not act as quickly as Fortinbras. His own decision and fear paralyze him. Eventually, his revenge occurs, but at great cost to all. The irony is that Hamlet, by fulfilling his revenge, has destroyed the family whose honor he sought to avenge. His mother and he both perish, as well as the woman who would have willingly borne his child. Laertes is the third son to avenge a father, but he too causes great destruction. He allows his base emotions to rule him, and he becomes a cohort of the evil Claudius, rather than approach vengeance as a task to be carried out in the most acceptable fashion. Hamlet and Laertes fix themselves on murder as the only means of revenge. Unfortunately, this decision ultimately destroys them both. So there is appearance versus reality in Hamlet. Shakespeare also examines his favorite theme of the discrepancy between appearance and reality. The dilemma of what is real is established at the very beginning of the play. The dead king appears to have been bitten by a snake. In reality, he has been poisoned. The ghost appears as an apparition from the depths of hell. In truth, he is the medium of reality, revealing the facts to Hamlet. Since Hamlet doubts the veracity of the ghost's revelation, he decides to put on the appearance of being mad. In the process, he really drives Ophelia mad, causing her death. At times, it also seems that Hamlet's appearance of madness has become a reality. The dual scene also presents an appearance versus reality. The duel appears to be an innocent competition between two rivals. In reality, it is a deadly match that causes the death of the four main characters. The most obvious and perhaps the cleverest symbol of appearance versus reality is the play within a play. The actors representing mythical figures appear on stage and act out the events that have happened in reality. Hamlet carefully orchestrates this appearance so that he can gauge the degree of reality by Claudius's reaction. In summary, the theme of appearance versus reality is so well developed that everything in the play must be questioned, for nothing appears certain. The first, Shakespeare uses a parallel plot structure in this play, with the revenge plot in his first part mirrored by the revenge plot in the second half. The first half of the play revolves around the ghost's revelation to Hamlet that he, Hamlet's father, was murdered by Claudius. The ghost demands that his son avenge his death. Hamlet then must determine if what the ghost says is true. After staging the mousetrap play and determining Claudius's guilt, Hamlet considers himself clear to kill Claudius. Instead, he hesitates again and he goes to visit Gertrude to confront her with her mistake in marrying Claudius. During this scene, Hamlet is startled to realize that someone is listening behind an arras or curtain, and thinking of the eavesdropper is Claudius. He kills him. Unfortunately, the now dead eavesdropper was Polonius. Polonius's death sets the second part of the play in motion. Laertes comes blazing home, hot to murder Hamlet to avenge Polonius, and Ophelia, whose suicide Laertes blames on Hamlet. Claudius is able to manipulate Laertes, leading to the gruesome ending. The parallel plot structure allows Shakespeare to explore the theme of revenge in greater depth by pitting Hamlet's hesitation to kill against Laertes' hot-headed thirst for vengeance. Shakespeare's tragedies, Shakespeare's tragedies followed the pyramid formula with the exposition occurring in Act 1, followed by the rising action in Act 2. In Act 3, the climax occurs, which leads to the falling action in Act 4 and the final resolution or denouement in the final Act 5. Exposition sets up the background of the story, introduces the characters and the chief conflicts. The rising action presents events that spring from the chief conflict but that often produce grave consequences. The chief point of no return occurs in Act 3 when the character creates for himself a situation which he cannot undo. The falling action reveals the swiftly compounding consequences resulting in resolution in Act 5. In a tragedy, this resolution is often death and the restoration of order by some outside party. In telling the story of a fatally indecisive character's inability to choose the proper course to avenge his father's death, Hamlet explores questions of fate versus free will. whether it is better to act decisively or let nature take its course, and ultimately, if anything we do in our time on earth makes any difference. Once he learns his uncle has killed his father, Hamlet feels duty bound to take decisive action, but he has so many doubts about his situation and even about his own feelings that he cannot decide what action to take. The conflict that drives the plot of Hamlet is almost entirely internal. Hamlet wrestles with his own doubt and uncertainty in search of something he believes strongly enough to act on. The play's events are side effects of this internal struggle. Hamlet's attempts to gather uh, more evidence of Claudius's guilt alert Claudius to Hamlet's suspicions. And as Hamlet's internal struggle deepens, he begins to act impulsively out of frustration, eventually murdering Polonius by mistake. The conflict of Hamlet is never resolved. Hamlet cannot finally decide what to believe or what action to take. This lack of resolution makes the ending of Hamlet especially horrifying. Horrifying, nearly all the characters are dead, but nothing has been solved. The play's exposition. Hello, am I audible? सुनाई पड़ रही है? Hello, 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 hello. The play's exposition shows us that Hamlet is in the midst of three crises. His nation is under attack, his family is falling apart, and he feels deeply unhappy. The ghost of the old king of Denmark appears on the castle battlements, and the soldiers who see it believe it must be a bad omen for the kingdom. They discuss the preparations being made against the threat from the Norwegian prince. 14 brass. The next scene deepens our sense that Denmark is in political crisis as Claudius prepares a diplomatic strategy to divert the threat from 14 brass. We also learn that as far as Hamlet is concerned, his family is in crisis. His father is dead, and his mother has married someone Hamlet disapproves of. Hamlet is also experiencing an internal crisis. Gertrude and Claudius are worried about his mood, and his first soliloquy we discovered that he feels suicidal. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt. William Shakespeare was pulled out of grammar school at age 14 and thus never actually went to university. So he did not know about things like frat parties and eating pizza rolls for every meal. The three crises of the play's opening in the kingdom, in Hamlet's family, and in Hamlet's mind lay the groundwork for the play's inciting incident. The ghosts demand that Hamlet avenge his father's death. Hamlet accepts at once that it is his duty to take revenge, and the audience can also see that Hamlet's revenge Hello, hello. Uh, the three crises of the play's opening in the kingdom, in Hamlet's family, and in Hamlet's mind lay the groundwork for the plays. Hamlet accepts at once that it is his duty to take revenge, and the audience can also see that Hamlet's revenge could go some way to resolving the play's three crises. Hello, 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 hello. I suppose I suddenly went offline. Hello, hello. Suddenly it was cut off. Suddenly it was cut off. Okay, I will complete this lecture. I don't know what happened. For the whole of the second act, the play's rising action, Hamlet delays his revenge by pretending to be mad. We learn from Ophelia that Hamlet is behaving as if he is mad with love for her. We see him make fun of Polonius by talking nonsense which contains half hidden jokes uh, at Polonius's expense. Hamlet tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that he has lost all his mirth. Only at the end of Act 2 do we learn the reason for Hamlet's delaying tactics. He cannot work out his true feelings about his duty to take revenge. First, he tells he doesn't feel as angry and vengeful as he think he should. As the rising rising action builds toward a uh, climax. Hamlet's internal struggle deepens until he starts to show signs of really going mad. At the same time, Claudius becomes suspicious of Hamlet, which creates an external pressure on Hamlet to act. Hamlet begins Act 3 debating whether or not to kill himself. To be or not to be, that is the question. And moments later, he hurls misogynistic abuse at Ophelia. He is particularly upset about women's role in marriage and childbirth. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Which reminds the audience of Hamlet's earlier discussed with his own mother and her second marriage, the troubling development of Hamlet's misogynistic feelings makes us wonder how much Hamlet's desire to kill Claudius is fueled by the need to avenge his father's death, and how much his desire fueled by Hamlet's resentment of Claudius for taking his mother away from him. Claudius, who is eavesdropping on Hamlet's tirade, becomes suspicious. becomes suspicious that Hamlet's madness presents some danger and decides to have Hamlet sent away. Hamlet is running out of the time to take his revenge. So, thank you, dear students. I could not succeed in delivering all my lecture. A few paragraphs have been left, so I will send it to you in class notes. Okay, thank you, all of you.